Сегодня с нами доктор Дуглас Грэм. Я думаю, что для тех, кто хоть как-то с сыроедением связан или с фрукторианством, это тот человек, которого представлять не надо. Я все-таки скажу два слова. Дуглас, наверное, самый такой авторитетный, длительный в мире на сегодня сыроед из известных, фрукторианец. Более 30 лет он придерживается этой диеты, причем в низкожировой форме сыроедения. И при этом он атлет, спортсмен, тренер, воспитавший многих спортсменов международного и национального уровня. Он консультант, диетолог, он врач, он хиропрактик при этом. И книга его, книга 80-10-10, «Диета» 80-10-10, в которой изложена как бы вся основная материальная часть его видения сыроедения и фрукторианства, она долгие годы уже существует и в российской сети интернета и доступна русским читателям, но в ее сокращенном таком, так сказать, общественном переводе, выполненном силами людей, англоговорящих россиян, которые на форуме ее перевели. А сейчас мы планируем издание этой книги на русском в ее полной авторизированной версии, официальной. И, собственно, по этому поводу и по еще многим другим приятным поводам мы сейчас с доктором Грэмом здесь и встретились. Здесь это в США, на Woodstock Fruit Festival в Upstate New York. И, собственно, я перейду сейчас на английский, а для вас начнется перевод. So I just introduced you briefly, and now on behalf of all Russian readers and all Russian raw foodists and low-fat raw vegan or high-carb raw vegan foodists, I want to thank you, Dr. Gрэм, from the depths of our heart for all what you're doing. For me personally, the biggest inspiration, once I turned raw vegan like 1 year ago, and I tried all those, sprouts, beans, crackers, whatever you have, avocados and stuff, until I read your book, having found it somewhere on the internet.
Yes.
And it's existing in Russia for years now, and it's translated by some volunteer folks on some internet forums. It's pretty good, the translation, but there are some mistakes, and it's abridged form. It's maybe like 60% digest of your book, the main gist of it, yeah? And there are no cases in the end, no charts, but the main part is there. So people are reading your book, although it's not published, and the people are influenced by your book and by your work and by your message. So thank you very much from all of us for that. And right now, as I told you, we purchased rights and we're about to publish your book legally in Russian and make an authorized and properly verified translation in the full form of it. And maybe you'll be generous enough to share with us some special foreword with few inspiring lines for Russian readers.
Sure.
And now I would ask you if you don't mind to say a few words for those who wrote your book, who read your book, those who are about to read your books, and just for those who never heard of your name or about your method, just for those raw foodists and raw foodists to be who are watching us right now.
Thank you. My first thought is to welcome you to the 80-10-10 community. I'm flattered, I'm honored, I'm excited that people are translating and learning about the 80-10-10 diet around the world. I've been approached now by people in 35 or 36 different languages to translate the book. Please translate the book. And I'm honored by this because I know that we're bringing a good thing to people. We're bringing a good thing to people. We're teaching people how to feel better. We're teaching people how to be more energetic. We're teaching people how to live freely by having health rather than feeling the shackles of infirmity. And we're teaching people to have the desire to strive, to be the best that they possibly can at whatever they do. And this is my belief, that if you're healthy, you can do what you do far better. If you're not healthy, all your time gets taken up trying to get healthy. So once you are healthy and you can really feel the deliciousness of health, then you can spend your time pursuing your interests. You are free to do those things that mean the most to you, whether that's be a better daddy, or be a better teacher, or play the piano, or do sports, or whatever it is that interests you, whether it's creative in your head, in your body, in your spirit. What we find is that healthier people invariably outperform less healthy people in every area of life. And so we want to see as many healthy people as possible. We know that planting trees for the production of fruit is the best thing that could possibly happen to the planet. Nothing better than planting trees. And there are tree planting organizations all around the world that are demonstrating this as we're reclaiming deserts, we're cleaning the air, we're rebalancing the environment by planting trees. And so by planting trees, we create habitat, we create the fruits of the trees and the sweetness that comes out of this. And the beauty of it is that trees actually get their nutrients from down deep in the soil, bring this nutrients up into the fruit, the leaves, the wood itself, and as those fruit trees break down, they enrich the soil. Whereas grain harvest is very hard on the soil and pulls the nutrients out, fruit harvest builds the soil. So we build an environment for creatures, from birds to bugs. We build an environment that makes for healthier soils and the soil microbes that live therein. We bring food to ourselves that's sweet and allow our own health to build. And personally, life is good all the way around on the 80-10-10 diet. So I welcome you into this community. I look forward to meeting people and hearing from people who are reading the 80-10-10 diet in Russian. And I'm excited to support you in your quest for health.
Thank you, Dr. Gрэм.
It's my
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
Truly my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Gрэм kindly agreed to answer a few of our questions. And one of those, the first one would be, most obvious and actual for Russian people, would be, do you have any tips or special suggestions for those who transfer to raw food lifestyle already on it, but experience some difficulties due to Russian climate, which is cold winter. Basically, we have some places almost 9 months.
Okay, yeah, sure,
snow
sure.
and so forth. So keep
9 months of
yourself warm.
snow.
Keep yourself. You live in Britain. That's
It's cold and wet.
Yeah, it's cold and wet. In Russia, it's less wet. Some areas are wet on the seaside, but inland Russia, like Moscow, is pretty cold. Yeah, you can have. It's normal to have minus 15 during winter and snow for from November till March or even April.
Well, yes, I have a few thoughts on cold weather. First of all, if you're trying to live outside naked and eat frozen food while sitting on the street in some cold city, you're probably going to die before the night is over. Fortunately, people on 80-10-10 usually live in homes that have heat, and they wear clothing, and they have blankets. And so they're really not relying on the food to make them warm. We rely upon activity to generate heat, and clothing and bedding and the heat of our house to help us hold on to the heat that we generate. I'm not recommending that you eat cold food in the wintertime. Pull it out of the fridge and eat it and see how much you can tolerate. 80-10-10 is not a hardship. You must learn strategies. You must learn to keep your fruit on countertops. Or if you're going to have salad, to take it out of the fridge a few hours before you eat it so it's not so cold. But the beauty is that you have heat in your house. You probably eat your food sitting at your table at the same temperature that somebody in South Florida eats their food. They cool their house down to that temperature that you heat your house up to. And so I don't think the cold is really an issue. To be honest, when I think of the warmest I've been in the last few years, the warmest I've been has been when I'm shoveling snow. When I'm shoveling snow, I get very warm.
That's where you sweat.
Okay, and so I have to be careful not to, to sweat. I have to open up my layers, and I'm down to shirtless and I'm shoveling snow, trying It's quite funny actually. So I don't think that cold per se is a problem, but there are changes that happen to a person on 80-10-10 where the average temperature, the body temperature of a person who's eating cooked food, the average body temperature is typically about 98, or what do we call it in centigrade? Do you use centigrade?
Yeah, we have 36,
so we're talking 36 roughly. On a raw food diet, the average body temperature is somewhere between 34 and 35. This is pretty cool relatively. And so we have to get used to this new body temperature, and that change requires a little bit of an adaptation. It might require adding one extra layer of clothing. It might require being a little more active. Typically for most people within a year or two, they've gotten used to that new body temperature. But we have to understand there are places in the world that you might go, a movie theater, for instance, where they keep it very cool, and that's because most people are burning up. And when you become a raw fooder and you're not burning up anymore and you go into a cool place, it's going to feel even cooler to you. This is more of a consideration than a food problem. And this is just a matter of wearing an extra layer of clothing until you get used to it, especially if you were 120 kilos on a cooked food diet and you drop down to 80 kilos on a raw food diet, and now you're an 80-kilo man, but you've lost 40 kilos of insulation. Fat is an insulation, and when you lose 40 kilos, A, you're not doing the work to carry it around, and B, you're not wearing your coat anymore. You have to make up for this a little bit with some extra layers of clothing. This is a very little thing. Really, it's not about the food making you hot or cold, but we do have to adapt and take into consideration that the body does go through some changes, and we have to make allowances.
Thank you. It's pretty clear. That's how I survived my first winter, basically doing the same thing.
Hot bath.
Now it's the second one to come. Yeah. I ran away to Southeast Asia.
Yeah, that works very good.
And spent some time in Philippines. Another question would be, it's also a very popular concern that turns many people off the low-fat raw vegan diet, is the popular misconception that simple carbs somehow create diabetes, or due to them, they are to blame for the hikes in blood sugar, and they have a high glycemic index and so forth and so on. I know your line of explanation, but if you maybe share with people debunking that misconception, that would be helpful.
Okay, in 1959, in the American Medical Association's journal, they explained the cause of diabetes as too much fat in our diet. On YouTube today, there is a medical doctor who recently put out a video called How to Become a Diabetic in 6 Hours. He shows very clearly that by consuming fat, he actually used oil, by consuming fat, he raised blood sugar dramatically, dangerously, in a matter of hours, simply by no sugar was involved in this experiment. What happens is that the more fat we consume, the more dietary fat we have, the harder it is for sugar to exit the bloodstream. It can get in, but it can't get out. And this problem is known as diabetes, too much sugar in the blood. So sugar gets in, it can't get out. And this is a problem, but it happens from the consumption of fat, and strictly from the consumption of fat. If there's low fat in the bloodstream, then sugar gets into the bloodstream and exits the bloodstream and goes to the cells where it's supposed to go. As far as glycemic index, it's rather interesting, because if people would look at the glycemic index, we'll see that it's broken into 3 categories, and that all the fruits that are listed are either low glycemic or moderate glycemic, with only 2 as the last 2 items mentioned in the high glycemic index categories And personally, when I've run the numbers, I think they should also be in medium. But they had to put something there.
Yeah.
But the reality is that fruit is not a high glycemic food. All the glycemic index foods that are high tend to be starchy foods. Now, at the same time, glycemic index isn't really the important index. The important index is what's known as glycemic load, which is a different problem, a different thing to consider. And in terms of glycemic load, fruits are ideal. But I explain glycemic load and glycemic index in great depth within the 80-10-10 diet.
Yeah. So read the book, guys.
So read the book, guys.
And another famous boogeyman for newcomers is the B12. I mean, it's been talked over and over again, but still people address me personally saying, but where are you getting your B12? It is not synthesized inside your body, it has to be consumed with the kidneys or livers of the animals you devour and so forth. What would you say about B12 for this?
B12 has got to be the most misunderstood thing I've ever had the pleasure of bumping into, and I'm not a B12 expert. But first let's understand that the B vitamins, all the B vitamins, are lumped together in a group known as stress vitamins. If you have a lot of stress, you're likely going to have problems with many of your B vitamins, not just B12. But B12 is different than many of them because B12 is produced in only one way. It is produced as the metabolic waste of about 100 different types of microbes. Some of these microbes live inside the mucous membranes of your nose and throat. Some of these microbes live inside your intestines. Some of these microbes live in the soil. There are some of them living on the dirt that accumulates at the stem of an apple. There's about 100 different kinds of microbes who essentially poop B12. And we consume this not as a finished product. We consume this as an extrinsic factor, meaning it comes from outside of us. It comes from the bacteria, even if those bacteria are inside of us.
Yep.
Okay. And then our stomach, part of the lining of the stomach, produces a factor known as intrinsic factor. The extrinsic factor, the intrinsic factor combine, and we end up with what we call B12. Now, if you're under stress, your stomach does not function the way it's supposed to. And it can affect your B12 levels if your stomach is always being tied in knots. You're just always in emotional turmoil. You have debt so big that you can't even figure out where to turn. If you're in relationships that are just tearing you apart and breaking you down and just crushing you over and over again, if the workload is just more than you can handle, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting exercise, you're not taking care of yourself. And so there's many, many ways that you can have trouble with intrinsic factor, even though you're being exposed to enough B12. Also, there are people who have what are known as absorption issues, typically lumped together as malabsorption syndrome. And if you have absorption problems, you may also bump into problems with B12 because you're simply not absorbing much of anything.
But being a meat eater?
Being a meat eater has nothing to do with B12. The only reason there's B12 in meat, well, there's two basic reasons. One, because if the animals eat grass right down to the earth, they might pick up some soil-borne organisms and consume the poop of those organisms that includes B12. Depends on the soil. Lots of soil depends on the amount of pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and insecticides that have been sprayed on that soil. If enough of that stuff has been utilized, then there's probably not any soil-borne organisms manufacturing B12 anyway. It turns out that most livestock is injected with B12 because they're B12 deficient too. But once they've been injected, well, now when you consume the livestock, you're consuming the B12 injections. You're taking supplemental B12. If we look at many of the grain products, especially breakfast cereals, you'll see that they are enriched, and many of them are enriched with B12. So you eat breakfast, you take a B12 supplement. You eat lunch with a meat sandwich, you take a B12 supplement. You have some various kind of grain products at dinner, some breads and whatnot that are enriched, and then meat with it, and you're taking 2 supplements. And then we say, well, these people who supplement 3 times a day, let's look at their B12 level and call that normal. Gee, I don't know, they're supplementing 3 times a day. I'm not convinced that their levels are normal or desirable. Perhaps over here is a more desirable level. Certainly if you have B12 deficiency symptoms, well, take some B12. But correct the problem, the cause of the problem, so that you're not relying on it forever. I don't take B12. I push myself pretty hard in life. I experience a fair amount of growth opportunities in terms of challenge and stress, but I deal with it in what I like to think of as a reasonably healthy way. I handle it. It's not making it so I can't eat, or so I can't digest, or so I can't be in good spirits. I'm not bumping into B12 problems personally.
You obviously do some tests, right? Every now and then.
I never do tests.
Oh, you never do tests.
I don't have any
only
symptoms.
Rely on your symptoms.
I just rely on, if I don't have symptoms, why would I do tests?
Exactly.
If I had symptoms, I might do tests to make sure that the symptoms really are B12. But I might, if I had symptoms, just supplement with B12 for a little bit and be done with it. And if the symptoms went away, then I know for sure it was B12. And if they weren't, then I might go for tests and go, what is going on? I'm having symptoms and I don't know what's causing them, and it's not B12. But I don't really see a problem B12. But what we do see is if your levels are always up here, because you've been eating all these foods that are supplemented and enriched and whatnot with B12, and your levels drop. It's interesting how levels tend to do that in a human body. All sorts of things in the human body. What they tend to do is they go down lower than you want them to and then back up. There's sort of what's known as a rebound or a bounce back or a dual effect. It goes down and then back. And it might not come back up as high as it was before. It might just come up to healthy levels. So a lot of times people are just looking at their levels and they see them dropping and they go, oh my gosh, I'm having problems. And they go, yeah, are you having any symptoms? And they go, no, I have no symptoms. My balance is good, my fingers and toes don't tingle, I'm not more irritable than usual, I'm not having hallucinations, imagining sounds or colors or tastes or anything, I'm not getting truncal or nuchal rigidity, I'm not getting lightning bolts up and down my spine, I'm not having any of the symptoms that people tend to associate as neurological problems, so, that B12 could well be the issue. But it's interesting to note that huge segments of the meat-eating population also go B12 deficient, which is why these products are enriched with B12. So it's not by any means a raw food problem, and in many ways it's not a raw food problem. But even if you go B12 deficient, so you take some supplements, it's just not a big deal.
Thank you. That will calm people down a little bit.
A little.
And another worry, and it also affected me, is the weight loss. Like I'm almost on, just starting my second year of 80-10-10 lifestyle, and I lost personally maybe 30 pounds, sometimes like 15 kilos.
Yeah, 10,
I feel
15.
kind of okay. I feel much better, but people are concerned. They approach me. What's happened? Do you have AIDS or do you have cancer? What happened to you?
Yeah. Oh, I got healthy.
Yeah.
No, I got healthy. How about you? What happened to you? You haven't lost weight.
All my water and fat. It's difficult to explain. But anyway, the people are quite concerned, some of them, that on low-fat raw vegan, they do lose a lot of weight. When will I get it back? And do I have to get it back? So that's another worry I can always...
I'm amazed how much people find to worry about. People worry about a lot of stuff. I mean, I've worked with some people who were 200 kilos, and they said, oh, I don't know if I should go on a low-fat raw vegan program. I might get too skinny. Going like, could we deal with that 130 kilos from now? Because you're not going to lose the first 130 overnight. It's not going to sneak up on you. Many people have an image of how much they should weigh, or an idea what they should weigh. They have a picture of what's normal based on what they see all around them. We don't see as many trim, thin people as we used to.
Yep.
We don't see people who, at least the English word is wiry, really lithe, you know, like ballerina thin, acrobat thin,
Standards change.
long distance runner thin. You know, we turn on the TV, we watch the Olympics, we don't see any fat people except maybe the shot putters and everybody else, you know, maybe a hammer thrower. But everybody else is like, oh, astonishingly ripped bodies, and we go, oh, that's just good for them, that's not for everybody. Well, why isn't that for everybody? Why isn't the athletic physique good for everybody? We don't lose muscle when we lose weight on 80-10-10. We don't lose ability when we lose weight on 80-10-10. We're losing some excess fat, and there's really nothing wrong with that. Is it possible for some people to lose more weight than they wanted to? We go back to this rebound. Yeah, I did. I lost weight. I lost weight more than I wanted to. I'm about 70 kilos now. Actually, I'm about 68 or 69 kilos to be accurate. And I'm about 68, 69 kilos. And when I first went raw, I dropped down to about 64.
I'm
It was
64 now.
64 really caught my attention. You know, what's going on? I don't want to go any lower. And I stayed at 64 for a little while, and then it came back up. And for the last 25 years, I've been, bam, right there at 68. And it just doesn't change. I'm not losing weight. I'm not gaining. I'm not losing muscle mass. I'm holding my own as far as that. I've got the energy that I've always had. I'm still performing well in sports. I'm just not fat. And I don't think fat really is something anybody needs to strive for. It's not a goal. I think we're better off being trim and healthy and fit rather than housebound.
Carrying some extra weight as an investment. Thank you.
Sure.
I had another one. Maybe you just say a few words about the importance of being low-fat raw vegan instead of just simply raw vegan, and the whole universe of difference it makes.
It is an entirely different concept to be 80-10-10 than it is to be 10-10-80. The protein factor doesn't change. It doesn't change in almost any diet. Almost everybody in the world eats about 10% of their calories from protein. All we're talking about is, are we eating a lot of fat or are we eating a lot of carbohydrate? If we eat a lot of fat, then we go into some abnormal physiology known as ketosis. We don't have sufficient carbohydrates to burn our fats cleanly. We suffer from the effect of ketosis, A, by going into what's known as failure to thrive, B, by having it adversely affect our discrimination and thought-making, decision-making abilities, and C, by it affecting all of our cells in a fashion very similar to the way alcohol functions and works on us. None of this is a plus. It accelerates the aging process. So we want to make sure that we consume enough calories from carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are the body's preferred fuel. It's what the body puts into the muscle in a form known as glycogen. It's what we carry around in our blood as blood sugar. We keep sugar in the liver to fuel the brain. The brain cells run 100% on sugar. And so when we're on a high-fat diet, we do two things besides those I've already mentioned. 1 and 2 are uptake, transport, and delivery related. Our ability to uptake sugar into the bloodstream, our ability to uptake oxygen into the bloodstream from the air outside through the lungs and into the bloodstream, this is uptake. Both of these are impaired as the amount of fat in our diet goes up. Our ability to transport that oxygen and glucose through the bloodstream is also impaired. And then finally our ability to deliver the oxygen and the glucose. These are our two critical factors in life. It has a hard time crossing the membrane, can't get out of the bloodstream, has a hard time crossing the membrane again, can't get to the cell. And so uptake, transport, and delivery of two critical factors, oxygen and carbohydrate, or glucose, both are heavily compromised as the fat in the diet goes up. This leads to conditions such as cancer, diabetes, heart disease, kidney problems, all sorts of digestive disorders. It's a rather long list. Is food everything there is in your whole life? No. Is whether you eat high fat or low fat the be-all, end-all of your entire happiness? No. But the difference between low fat and high fat is the difference between health and non-health.
And people who move to vegan or vegetarian lifestyles or even raw vegan lifestyles, they often eat even more fat than people on standard European or American diet.
Sure. I mean, what we're seeing is that in the vegetarian world, low-fat vegetarian has become accepted as the norm. In the vegan world, low-fat vegan has become accepted as the norm or the optimum in terms of health production. And I don't believe it will take very much longer before we'll see the exact same thing in raw vegan circles, that low-fat raw vegan is the only healthy approach. You can't double your fat intake from what you did on a standard Western diet as you go on a raw fat diet, because fat is just not particularly satiating. So fat and grass or fat and salt, this is not a way to live. And I've seen a lot of people develop serious eating disorders, health problems, emotional issues of all types on the very high fat approach to raw food. We're much better off eating carbohydrate. Eat fruit. Life is sweet.
Thank you, Dr. Грэм.
My pleasure.
Спасибо за внимание. Про книжку я вам уже сказал. Те контакты, по которым можно обратиться к доктору Грэму, вся его вот эта тема и та община, то комьюнити, которое существует вокруг него, можно найти на его веб-сайте. Это такой крупнейший фрукторианский или сыроедный веб-сайт www.foodandsport.com. Эти все координаты будут содержаться в книжке, поэтому вы сможете также их там увидеть. И если вам что-то интересно, ответы на вопросы, какая-то форум общения, вы сможете все это обнаружить там. Поэтому спасибо вам большое. Спасибо, доктор Грэм. Thank you very much. Спасибо.
My pleasure. Truly, I'm honored to come and be with you.